Right now, Florida is home to more of America's most overvalued housing markets than any other state in the country. In the most overheated Florida metro on the list, buyers are paying roughly 42% more for a home than that market has historically been worth. Not 42% more than last year. 42% above what the market's own long history says the home should cost. But here is what almost no one quoting that number actually explains, and it changes everything. Overvalued does not mean a downturn is coming. The very economists who produce these rankings are clear that a sharp decline like the one Florida saw from 2006 to 2012 is unlikely this time, because high rents are holding these prices up. So this is not a warning that prices are about to fall. It is something more precise and far more useful. It is a warning about how long you could be stuck at the price you pay. Here is the single number this entire video runs on. It is called the premium, and it comes from the Beracha and Johnson Housing Market Ranking, produced by two respected real estate economists, Ken Johnson, now at the University of Mississippi, and Eli Beracha at Florida International University. Every month, they take each major metro and compare its current home prices to that same metro's own long-term pricing trend, stretching all the way back to 1996 using Zillow data. The premium is simply how far above its own history a market is priced. And this is the part you have to understand because the comment section will absolutely test it. This is not one city being compared to another city. It is each city being measured against its own past. Tampa is not being compared to Miami. Tampa is being compared to Tampa. By that measure, and only that measure, 10 Florida metros are now stretched further beyond their own history than almost anywhere else in the nation. To understand how extreme this got, rewind to 2023. At the peak of this cycle, Florida held 6 of the 10 most overvalued markets in the entire country, and one Florida metro was the single most overvalued market in all of America. Prices have cooled a little since then, but the state still dominates this list like nowhere else. Let us count them down, and I will tell you exactly how far above its own history each one is priced, and what that actually means for you if you buy there. Number 10 is Ocala, the fast-growing horse country town in north-central Florida. Ocala lands on the Beracha and Johnson overvalued list, carrying a premium in the high 30s, right in line with the rest of the state. Ocala's story is simple. It was one of the cheapest, quietest markets in Florida, and then a wave of new arrivals chasing affordability poured in, and prices raced far ahead of anything Ocala had ever seen before. The problem is not that Ocala will lose value. The problem is that a buyer paying today's price is paying tomorrow's price already and may wait years before the market grows into the number they paid. In a town where local wages are modest, that gap between price and paycheck is exactly what makes the premium a warning. Zillow shows the typical Ocala home now priced in the mid-200,000s, cheap by Florida standards, but expensive by Ocala's own long history. And that difference is the whole point. Cheap compared to the coast is not the same as cheap compared to itself. Number 9 is Port St. Lucie on the Treasure Coast of the Atlantic. It too sits on the overvalued ranking with a premium up in the high 30s. Port St. Lucie was built for affordability, a place families moved to precisely because it was cheaper than the coasts to its north and south. Then the pandemic wave found it, master-planned communities filled almost overnight, and the prices climbed to levels this market had never supported before. Redfin now shows inventory here climbing and homes sitting longer than they did at the peak, which is the market quietly telling you the frenzy is over. Buy at the top of a premium like this, and you're betting the town keeps growing fast enough to justify a price it has never justified before. And the buyers who filled these new communities were disproportionately younger and more mortgage sensitive than the cash-rich retirees on the coasts, which means when rates rose, this market lost its momentum faster than most. A high premium and a stalling engine is a difficult pairing for anyone hoping to resell soon. Number 8 is the Daytona and Daytona beach area along the Interstate 4 corridor and the northeast coast, carrying a premium of about 38% above its own long-term trend. This stretch absorbed the overflow when Orlando became too expensive, and prices followed the crowd upward. But here is the mechanism that matters. Zillow already shows values in the Daytona Beach area sliding over the past year, which is what happens when a market runs well past its history and then demand cools. A high premium plus softening demand is the exact combination that leaves a recent buyer stuck, unable to sell for what they paid without waiting out several years of slow catch-up. Redfin shows homes here taking noticeably longer to sell than a year ago, which is the market gently reminding buyers that the days of instant appreciation are over. In a market like this, time is the price you pay for having paid the premium. Number 7 is Orlando, the theme park capital, priced at roughly 38% above its own historical trend. Orlando ran far past its history on a simple fuel, an endless assumption that tourism and new arrivals would keep pouring in forever. The trouble is Orlando's local wages. So much of the workforce here earns service and hospitality pay, and yet home prices climb to a level that assumes professional salaries. When the price of the average home detaches this far from what the average local actually earns, the market becomes what the economists bluntly call a place for move-up buyers and empty nesters, not for the people who already live and work there. Zillow has the typical Orlando home near $390,000, a figure that assumes a household income the local service economy simply does not widely provide. When the price and the paycheck drift this far apart, the premium is not an abstraction. It is the reason your own neighbors cannot afford to buy on your street. Number 6 is Jacksonville, up in the Northeast, carrying a premium of about 38%. For years, Jacksonville was Florida's affordable big city, the place a middle-class family could still buy in without a fortune. That reputation is exactly what drew the wave that pushed it past its own history. Redfin now shows Jacksonville homes sitting longer and cutting prices more often than a year ago, the fingerprints of a market that climbed higher than its foundation could comfortably support. The premium here is a quiet one, but it is real, and it means the easy value Jacksonville was once famous for has largely been priced away. A buyer moving to Jacksonville today, expecting the bargain it was known for a decade ago, is arriving a cycle too late. The value that made this city famous did not vanish. It was simply bid up and paid forward by everyone who arrived before them. If a metro you know has already shown up on this list, do me a quick favor and tap the like button, because it genuinely helps push this in front of other buyers before they overpay for a home they will be stuck in for years. And the next few metros are where the premiums climb toward the very top of the country. Number 5 is the Palm Bay and Melbourne area on the Space Coast, priced at nearly 40% above its own long-term trend. Just a few years ago, this market was actually considered undervalued, one of the better deals in the state. Then prices surged and it flipped from a bargain into one of the most overvalued markets in the nation, a swing that tells you how violently this cycle moved. The Space Coast leans on aerospace and defense paychecks, and while those are good jobs, there are not enough of them to justify prices this far beyond the region's own history for the wider workforce. That gap is the premium, and the premium is the risk. What makes the Space Coast especially instructive is how fast it flipped. A market can go from one of the best deals in the state to one of the most overvalued in the nation in just a couple of years, and the people who bought at the very top of that swing are the ones now holding the largest premium and the least room to profit from a quick sale. Number 4 is Lakeland, sitting almost exactly between Tampa and Orlando, carrying a premium of about 40%. Lakeland was the affordable heart of the Interstate 4 corridor, a logistics and distribution town where housing was cheap because wages were modest. Then it caught the overflow from both big cities at once, and prices vaulted past anything Lakeland had ever supported. The mechanism here is stark. Local incomes did not climb 40%, only the prices did. So a buyer today is paying a professional's price in a market that still pays working wages, and that is a price that can take many years to grow into. Zillow puts the typical Lakeland home around $300,000 now. And while that still sounds affordable next to Miami or Naples, measured against Lakeland's own decades of history, it is a genuine stretch. Affordable and overvalued are not opposites. A market can be both at once, and Lakeland is the proof. Number 3 is the Cape Coral and Fort Myers area, and this one comes with history. Number 3 is the Cape Coral and Fort Myers area, and this one comes with history. Today, its premium sits around 42% near the top of the country. But rewind to 2023, and Cape Coral was not just overvalued. It was the single most overvalued housing market in the entire United States, with buyers paying an astonishing premium of around 62% above its own history. It has come down from that extreme, but it remains one of the most stretched markets anywhere. Zillow now shows values across this southwest Florida region among the fastest falling in the country, which is precisely what a market looks like when it climbed too far too fast and is now slowly settling back toward the trend it left behind. For a recent buyer here, that is the uncomfortable reality the premium was warning about all along. You did not do anything wrong. You simply bought a market that had gotten ahead of itself, and now you wait while it grows back into the number you already paid. If you have stayed with me this far, you already understand this better than most buyers walking into an open house this weekend, so stay for the final 2. Because these are the metros priced the furthest of all above their own past. Number 2 is the Northport, Sarasota, and Bradenton area on the southwest Gulf Coast, priced at nearly 42% above its own long-term trend. This region was one of the hottest destinations of the entire pandemic boom, and the prices show it, having climbed to a level far beyond anything the area's history had ever justified. Redfin shows condos and homes here sitting longer in inventory building, the classic signature of a market that overshot. A buyer stepping in near this premium is not buying a bargain. They are buying the very top, and betting the region can grow into a price it has never before supported. Redfin shows the typical home in this region now taking far longer to sell than it did at the height of the frenzy, with price cuts increasingly common. That is not a sign of a market falling apart. It is the sign of a market that got too far ahead of itself and is now catching its breath. And number 1, the most overvalued major housing market in the entire state of Florida is Tampa. According to the Beracha and Johnson ranking, buyers in the Tampa area are paying a premium of roughly 42.5% above the market's own long-term trend, one of the very highest readings in the country. Tampa is not some small speculative town. It is one of Florida's flagship metros, which is exactly what makes this so striking. When even Tampa, a large, diverse, established city, is priced this far beyond its own history, it tells you the overvaluation is not a fluke in a few tiny markets. It is statewide, and it reaches all the way to the top. A buyer in Tampa today is paying tomorrow's price, and the single most important question they can ask is not whether prices will fall. It is how many years they are prepared to hold before that price finally makes sense. And that question, how long will you hold, is the honest heart of this video. Tampa is not a warning to run, it is a warning to plan. Because at a premium this size, your timeline matters more than your timing. So there they are. 10 Florida metros and one single number running underneath every one of them. The premium, the distance between what you pay today and what the market has historically been worth. Before I give you the honest truth about what this does and does not mean, there is one resource worth knowing about if any of these metros is on your radar. I keep everything in one place, a single breakdown of 40 Florida towns, 20 that are genuinely worth buying into right now, and 20 worth staying well away from, each with the specific reason attached, including the overvaluation risk we have just walked through. If you want to see which side of that line a town falls on before you ever make an offer, the link is waiting in the description. But stay right here, because the honest truth about how far these prices can actually fall is the single most important thing you will take away from this entire video. And it is the opposite of what the fear headlines want you to believe. Here is that honest truth, and it matters because your trust is worth more than a scary story. Overvalued does not mean a sharp fall is coming. The economists behind these numbers say it plainly. They do not expect Florida prices to drop the way they did from 2006 to 2012, because high rents are holding these prices up from underneath. What the premium really measures is time. As Ken Johnson himself puts it, the risk is not that you lose everything. The risk is how long you have to hold the property, buy at one of these premiums, and plan to sell in a year or two, and you are taking a real gamble. But buy the same home and plan to hold it for 5 to 8 years, and the research suggests you should do just fine because the market slowly grows back into the price. This is not a story about a downturn. It is a story about patience. Think of the premium as a clock, not a cliff. It does not tell you the price is about to drop. It tells you roughly how long you may wait before the market's own growth justifies what you paid. For a patient owner, that clock runs quietly in the background. For someone who has to sell in a hurry, it can be expensive. The premium does not decide whether you win. Your timeline does. And here is the credibility test that proves the whole thing. If this were just fear, I would tell you all of Florida is doomed. It is not. Miami, the most famous market in the state, is actually one of the least overvalued and most stable major metros in Florida. And the researchers see little sign of any real decline there at all. The reason is simple. Miami's inventory stays tight, and the demand to live there never lets up from both the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So this is not every Florida market, and it is certainly not a warning that the sky is falling. It is a specific, measurable warning about 10 specific metros that have climbed the furthest beyond their own past, and about the patience it will take to own a home in them profitably. So what do you actually do with this? If you are buying in one of these 10 metros, the lesson is not to run away. It is to be honest with yourself about your timeline. Ask how many years you truly plan to stay, because a high premium punishes the short-term buyer and rewards the patient one. Ask how the price compares to what local families in that metro actually earn, because that gap is the premium in plain sight. And check the current Beracha and Johnson ranking before you sign, because these premiums move every month, and the exact number for your metro today may sit a little higher or lower than the reading I gave. Now, I genuinely want to hear from you, because the comments on these are always the sharpest part. Which of these 10 metros are you living in or looking at right now? And be honest, does the price you are seeing feel wildly out of line with what people around you actually earn? Drop it below, because someone scrolling right now is about to make an offer in that exact market. And if this helped you finally understand the difference between overvalued and doomed, hit the like button and subscribe, because these numbers shift every month, and I would rather you hear the next reading from me than overpay before you ever see it. Because that is exactly what is coming next. There is a group of Florida metros moving quietly in the opposite direction, markets that lagged during the boom and are now sitting below their own long-term trend, the genuinely undervalued places where the premium is on your side instead of against you. When those markets are recognized, that window closes. So stay with this channel and we will name the undervalued Florida towns where you are actually paying less than the home is worth before the rest of the country catches on.